A very good morning to one and all present here. So it's indeed a wonderful occasion all of us have gathered here. Before we start today's event, let's start with a quick silent prayer, please. May I request one to please pause the silent prayer. A very good morning to one and all present here. So it's indeed a wonderful occasion all of us have gathered here. Before we start today's event, let's start with a quick silent prayer, please. May I request one to please pause the silent prayer. A very good morning to one and all present here. So it's indeed a wonderful occasion.
Sorry for that.
Thank you. Kofi Annan once said, knowledge is power, information is liberating, education is the premise of progress in every society and every family. Good morning, and I, Dr. Anupama Maiki, is your host for the day. All of us know e-learning is not just a phase, it is the future's mainstay of education. It can turn the world into a classroom. So we have gathered here for an exclusive interactive session with Dr. Barbara Oakley on using generative AI to strengthen and speed learning. To give a quick introduction of Dr. Oakley, she is a renowned expert in the areas of neuroscience and social behavior with groundbreaking research published in the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, and the proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. She is a senior professor at Auckland University with a PhD in systems engineering, MS in electrical and computer engineering, and BS in electrical engineering from the University of Washington. Former US Army signal officer, reaching the rank of captain and Antarctic Services Medal recipient for service at the South Pole Station. She is a distinguished academician recognized as Michigan Distinguished Professor of the Year 2018 and a fellow of both the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers and the American Institute of Medical and Biological Engineers. She is the author of Hair of the Dog, Tales from a Russian Trawler, based on experiences as a Russian translator on Soviet trawlers in the Bering Sea. The Coursera's inaugural innovation instructor and a leading voice in digital education, and that is Dr. Oakley. She is the award-winning educator and researcher honored with the American Society of Engineering Education's Chester F. Carlson Award for Technical Innovation in Engineering Education 2015. So she is the author of the most popular course, Learning How to Learn, and she has a mind-boggling 2.5 million plus subscribers for this course. Ma'am, it's indeed an honor. I take this opportunity to extend a very warm welcome to our keynote speaker today, Dr. Barbara Oakley, who has graced this occasion in person. So I request our director, Dr. Purushottam Bang, to welcome Dr. Oakley with a knowledge bouquet.
It's very nice. Yes.
It's a wonderful book.
Wow. Okay.
Thank you so much. It's my privilege to welcome Sri D.P. Nagraj sir, who will be joining us a little later during the event. So I extend a very warm welcome to Sri D.P. Nagraj, who is the Honorary Joint Secretary of the Rashtriya Shikshan Samiti Trust for this event. And of course, today we have amidst us Ms. Prashasti Rastogi. She is the Senior Director, Coursera, as the guest of honor for today's event. To give a brief introduction about Ms. Prashasti, she is the former Director of Business Strategy and Partnerships at Wiley 2019 to 21. She is the Director of South Asia at Frankfurter Buttermy's leading international market expansion, had an extensive 7-year tenure at the German Academic Exchange Service, holding various leadership positions from 2005 to 12. She has a bachelor's degree in information technology and MBA in marketing from the Delhi University. She is a passionate reader, of course, when that we see as heading the Coursera team, and solo traveler with a strong network among authors, publishers, and booksellers. She is experienced in facilitating international business partnerships and market expansions across the publishing and educational sectors. Currently, Ms. Rastogi is leading strategic initiatives to foster global growth and partnerships in the education industry. I request our director, Dr. Bang, to please welcome Ms. Rastogi with knowledge bouquet. Yeah, very good. Thank you.
So that's good.
I take this opportunity to welcome our director, Dr. Purushottam Bang, who is a constant source of support and guidance in organizing these events. Welcome, sir. It is my responsibility to welcome all the special invitees the heads of RV institutions, the HODs from all the RV group of institutions, and of course the team from Coursera who have graced this occasion. We have with us Sri Sujit Chandan sir, who is part of this event. So welcome you for this event.
Former chairman of governing body of RBIM, privileged to have you, sir.
Excuse me, sir. One step, one step. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
I extend a very warm welcome to all my faculty colleagues and also students who are part of this event today. Welcome you all. And now moving ahead, I request Dr. Purushottam Bang to please give the opening remarks and set the context for today's event, sir. Over to you.
Morning, everyone. Dignitaries on the days, off the days. Sir, our former governing body chairman and trustee of RSSD, and heads of the institutions, Suraj sir, Uma madam, all my faculty colleagues from various sister institutions and my dear students. A warm welcome to you all. I will narrate you the story how we got connected with Coursera and what is that we are trying to do with Coursera. What is that we are trying to achieve through Coursera. Okay, I just for the benefit of everyone. We wanted to become autonomous and we became autonomous in 21. And before going to autonomy, you have to set your curriculum. So we had a 2 years brainstorming on what kind of curriculum we would like to have, because that is very paramount and very important. So we brainstormed on and refined the curriculum, presented it to various stakeholders, parents, students, recruiters, industry people, alumni, peers who are experts, got their feedback on the curriculum. In that first iteration of curriculum, final curriculum, we decided to introduce Coursera, through which we will offer electives. The thought process then was, how many faculty an institution can afford? Limit, right? There is a limit to the number of faculty that the institute can afford to recruit full-time, part-time, adjunct role, part-time role, visiting role, but there is a limit. On top of it, availability of experts is also sometimes a big challenge. But as an institution, you want to offer so many electives to your students. You don't want to deprive them of studying the subjects of their choice. So only option left to us then was the Coursera. By giving that license of Coursera to all our students, we enable them to do as many courses as they want. They can complete. Initially, it was a limited enrollment license, but the generosity of Coursera that they converted it into a unlimited enrollment license. What does that mean is the students can enroll into any of the 8,000 plus courses that are available across different disciplines, authored by the best of the best people, working for best of the best universities across the world. Is it possible for RBI to get those experts here? Possible. Only via media is through Coursera. So that is how we thought we will enable our students the first iteration itself. Luckily, our management was also very forward looking and they said, yes, let's try this. Okay. And in 21-25, because it was a limited enrollment license, they could do only 3 courses. So 3 courses we got embedded into our curriculum. Means they have to study those courses. There is no choice there. Okay. But in the second semester, they can pick their own open elective from various disciplines, psychology, music, photography, all right, analytics. Choose the area which fascinates you, which interests you. So one course they took it as a open elective. Then the second course we got embedded into our design thinking course. So they have to do that course as part of that design thinking course, which was authored by Gene of University of Virginia, one of the best course authority on design thinking. And we could embed that into our curriculum. So they have to do that course and they have to do parallelly 2 days intense workshop, hands-on workshop after completing that course. So that was about the second course. Third course was functional electives, domain electives. May I request everybody to put their mobiles on silent mode or if you can switch it off, nothing like. Yeah. So third elective was functional elective, domain elective, which they can take in the third semester. Because again, we cannot put everything in, sir, please come here. You can sit there. Welcome, sir. He is head of the RB College of Nursing. So third was functional electives based on the area of specialization. They can pick the course of their choice and complete it. Invariably, they have to complete. There is no choice there. Okay, so but the limit then was 3 courses. Okay, but then it didn't market more. We approached Coursera people. When they came for renewal, I said, sir, do something, do some magic. And they will also be knowing that students also cannot do too many courses if we give them the access. There is a limit to which they can also do the courses because it was their experience. Then the same license at the same price, they converted into a unlimited enrollment license. So thank you Coursera team for that. Because entire student community will remain indebted to you for that. Why I tell you? In the first year, they did only 3 courses, all were 8 students. In the second year, when it got converted into unlimited enrollment license, then something magic happened. We thought, they will only do 3 students. We always underestimate those students, by the way we teach. Okay. But we don't know, the potential of the students. For our surprise, some of the students could do 15 courses, 1 5, right? Imagine, you the 15 courses, if they appear in their CV, how strong their CVs will become. And how distinct they will become, and how the recruiter's job will become so easier to pick the right candidate. Not everyone, very few, but my wish is all should is 15 students, 15%. But slowly that day will also come when they will understand the importance of the courses that are curated on Coursera platform, world-class courses. Okay, there is no compromise there on the quality part. But whatever that is contemporary, that only you will study in those Coursera, not the outdated stuff. Sometimes we get a hang of a book which is 10-year-old, 15-year-old, 20-year-old. So our knowledge gets confined to that age, but that doesn't happen here. And just to narrate you, right, the areas that our students picked up, the open electives, mental health, positive psychology, post-war abstract painting, and be your best creative self, work smarter, introduction to psychology, approaching music theory, fashion as design, photography techniques, English for career development, the addicted brain, be your first creative self. Those are the kind of open electives. Long list. January it was around 60 plus courses. 60 plus unique courses opted by 180 students. Can I offer 60 courses? Can I identify 60 experts to deliver those courses? Impossible. So that is the benefit of Coursera that we got. Then design thinking, I told you she is the author. She wrote so many books on design thinking. Very, very amazing author from University of Virginia. Can I get her? I don't think so, right? Because we could get Barbara Mendon through Coursera. It's very difficult to get them because they are so busy. They are very so busy in their own world of academics and research. Very difficult to get them. And when it comes to functional electives, the functional R, Python, Tableau, data science, deep learning, venture financing, financial markets, corporate finance, global finance, digital media, digital marketing, brand management, engaging customers, recruiting, hiring, diversity and inclusion or organization, and the list goes on. So people could pick the subjects of their choice and could complete that through Coursera, which otherwise would remain a dream for them. Right? So that's the power that we gave it to our students through Coursera. But again, in the third year again we were excited. We again a dil mage more. Again we said, sir, enable my faculty. Okay, enable my faculty so that they can curate their own courses. If I'm offering strategic management, let's say hypothetical case, I should be able to design my own course in a very shortest possible time. Okay, so that is where the Coursera team took the help of AI and came out with the course developer. Okay, AI assisted course development, wherein you can actually design your course less than 1 hour or 2 hours. They say 30 minutes, but to design a proper course, I think within a day you should be able to design a very good course. Back and forth. You have to give your what is that you want to achieve through that course. Then it will pick the resources from all these 8,000 courses that are available on Coursera. Give you the long list of videos, reading material, study material, case study, and the research articles, web links, everything to you. It will arrange for you, it aligns for you. It will divide the entire course into set of modules for you. Only thing is you have to approve it. You have to again, work back and forth, realign, put your own stuff into the whatever that you wanted, which is not available on the Coursera world. You can create and put it in the course that you want. Think about it. Every teacher who is offering a course has created her own course. Her job becomes so easier. Right? She knows what to show, which video to show, which article, they should come prepared, reading. Everything is available and it is her own course. She can actually author it and give it to access to all the students. So that is what we would like to achieve going forward. And we seek the constant support of Coursera team, okay, Mahesh and his local team, okay, and please help us in that. And also keep orienting us because new developments keep happening on the Coursera platform. So keep orienting us, not only the faculty but also to my students, so that they will know which are the new courses, which are the go-to courses, which are in demand today. Not only the courses, there are around 800 plus the guided projects that are available, which again we try to integrate that into our curriculum. Padmalini, if I am right, right? For every subject, we said you have to complete this guided project that is available on Coursera. And that is how the enrichment of the learning happened through Coursera. On top of it, the professional certifications by various, companies like Google, Microsoft, the AWS, and the Salesforce, and so on and so forth. They are also available on the Coursera platform, and some of them also we try to integrate into our curriculum through CIA, that is continuous internal assessments, not into a formal curriculum, but through CIA. right? So we tried, I did so many things and would like to continue this journey going forward and seek your help support in that. I urge all my faculty mates also, please think about it and spend some time going through the Coursera platform. You will be amazed about when you come to know the kind of courses that are available on the platform. Okay. And about we are really lucky to have Barbara today, right? He's authored several books, but I'm showing just couple of books that I could manage to get, right? Which is on uncommon sense teaching. Okay. And learning how to learn. It's a very, very popular course, 4 million plus subscriptions today on the Coursera platform, celebrated author on Coursera. Okay. And this is again a very nice book, a mind for numbers. Those who cannot deal with numbers, how we can teach them numbers. Okay. Very, very interesting. And we really are eager to hear you, Barbara, today. And I was telling Barbara that I did a course on Harvard X, which is about future of learning, authored by Richard Elmore, which is again an authority who is a professor from Harvard School of Education. Harvard X courses are a little expensive compared to Coursera courses, right? But I could do that. And the kind of visualization that Richard made, who is no more, who died in 2021, I got to. And he talks about the four modes of learning, how it is going to emerge the learning paradigm. Before it was individual hierarchical, Gurukul style, one on one, and they used to go to the next levels. Individual hierarchical. Then collective hierarchical. Classrooms came in typical classroom, 60, and they sit and they graduate. Complete 10th, 12th, and graduate. Then he talks about individual collaborative and collective collaborative. So today we are in the area of collective collaborative mode of learning. Learning that could happen through networks of like-minded people, like-minded peers. They come together. For example, Kaggle, GitHub, they are all networks. A lot of learning happens through that. So that is the era. Okay, that is the change that we are going to foresee in the near future. And she's an authority. We would like to hear from her how it is going to be the future for all of us. And thank you so much, Anupama, for giving me this opportunity and share my few thoughts. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir, for giving a very broad overview of our association with Coursera over these 3 years, and especially during our autonomous journey. So may I now request, I'm sure all of us are eager to listen to Dr. Oklena. May I now request the keynote speaker to take us through the learning journey. Over to you, ma'am.
Okay, after a little bit of technical difficulty, um, uh, we are here finally. So thank you so much, and I have to say that the food here in Bangalore is amazing, and it's really. I'm not staying too long because I would be, my stomach would be going, I'm overwhelmed because the food is so good. And it's such a beautiful city. I just am very lucky to be here. But we have so much, I have so much to share. So let's just dive right in. So if we look at the world of generative AI and what it has for us, we want to remember the words of Fei-Fei Li, the very famous researcher in AI. Why is this doing this? This is kind of, oh, it is not working well. Okay, it's very slow, but it's working away. So Fei-Fei Li said, the AI won't replace humans, but humans who use AI will replace humans that don't. So we all kind of know it's a big wave that's hitting us with the revolution of AI. And just as when the printing press came out, people at the time often didn't realize what a revolution it was. But now this revolution is similarly uneven, but it is going to make revolutionary changes in education and in every aspect of our society. So I am from Oakland University, and people often think that's in California, since everywhere. And it's not. It's in Michigan, and that's me going to work at my day job. In February. So I teach that course, Learning How to Learn, with my colleague, Terry Sinowski. And Terry is the Francis Art Professor at the Salk Institute. And so when it comes to, well, let's look at Terry when he's taking a little break from his day job. It's a very different atmosphere in California than it is for me in Michigan during winter. So that's Terry taking a little break there. But this course, Learning How to Learn, for that, because of this course, I was invited to speak at Harvard. Now, I was a nervous wreck. You know, if you were invited to speak at Harvard, you'd be a little nervous too. So I went into the room and I was shocked. It was packed, standing room only, all around the edges. And I thought, why are there so many people here? It turns out one little course made for virtually nothing, mostly in my basement, that's my basement right there, had on the order of the same number of students as all of Harvard's massive open online courses and online courses put together, made for millions of dollars with hundreds of people. And what this tells you is that people are really fascinated by practically useful research-based insights on how you can learn more effectively. And that, as it turns out, helps you be a lot more productive on your job. So that is a big part of why our work has become so popular. But that we have many courses on Coursera, some on teaching, some on how do you advance and change in your upskilling in your work. How do you help your children learn more effectively? But what I'm here for today is to talk about things like ChatGPT and how you can use it more effectively. Now, let's just get a little bit of insight into ChatGPT. Some of you probably know that what generative AI does is a fundamental aspect is it predicts the next word in a sentence. But it's also doing much more than that. It's also relating words within sentences to one another. And what they found is a very effective way of numerically relating words to one another. But now, remember about 5 years ago, if you went to Google Translate, you would find these absolutely awful translations. And why was that? If you can forgive me, I'm going to anthropomorphize. In other words, I'm going to speak of the computer and generative AI as if it was a real human, but of course it's not. But it makes it easier. So if you think about what the computer was doing back in the day, was it was going along paying attention to each word, and by the time it would get to the end of the sentence, it would forget what was at the beginning of the sentence. So as you can imagine, if you can't remember what you were just saying, it does a really bad job of translating. So now though, through these clever techniques, there's ways of quantifying the relationships, not only within words, but within entire essays, within actually the web itself. So how does it do this? So we're going to take a tiny little history lesson here. Back in 2017, a paper was published called Attention is All You Need. And this paper, so my co-instructor, Terry Sinowski, he is the president of the Neural Information Processing Systems Conference. And this group, their conference is so important in AI that generally they have about 8,000 registrations available for the conference. Those registrations fill up within 10 minutes after the registration is open. So that gives you a sense, like Terry's previous book, if you look at the president of China, his bookshelf, the Chinese translation is there. So Terry was telling me, well, you know, when this paper was put forth to our conference, nobody thought it was important at all. They kind of put it off in a corner as a poster session, had a grad student present it, and everybody just kind of ignored it. Except we have now discovered that the insights of this paper are so important that this paper has been cited over 100,000 times. So it is, it's an amazing accomplishment. What was in this paper that was so magical? It was the idea of the transformer. And the transformer has the magic that makes generative AI do what it does. So what kind of things can it do? So I just want to introduce you to something called Suno. Has anyone heard of Suno or used it? Oh, you are really missing something. So this is the kind of creative thing that generative AI can do. You look, I entered in here that attention is all you need, that paper, and a few lines about what transformers do. Wrote me a song about transformers and what transformers can do. So let's see, do we have sound here?
Yeah.
Because it's not playing.
You have to play.
Oh, wait, it should play automatically. Let's see if it can. Oops. Now. We perhaps do not have sound. Okay, let's turn that off here. Okay, let's try again here. Oh, there it is. Oh, it's on my computer, but not on the, okay. But it's the coolest song. It's really, it created a song based on, see. So, what I want you to, so think about, do you have a wife or a husband who you would like to impress? Make a nice little song about them on Suno. It's pretty cool. Like, see, generative AI is not just the usual old AI. It's creative. And we'll talk a little bit about why it can be so creative. But at the heart of generative AI, as I mentioned, is the idea of the transformer. So what's the transformer? Let's take a quick look. So don't worry, I'm not going to go in depth, but it has an encoder. So your prompt, like for me, I would write, what is a good restaurant for me to go to in Bangalore? And that's my prompt. And then what it's going to do is it's going to come back with like a list of places, and then I'll say, no, near my hotel or something like that. We're going back and forth. But it's spitting out to the decoder what its answer to my prompt is. Now, from our perspective, what we're really interested in is the idea that the flow of information through this transformer is remarkably similar to the flow of information through the human brain. So if you look here, we should be, there we go. So as you can see, that flow, what it turns out is that throughout the development of artificial intelligence, whenever artificial intelligence would get stuck, they would go to neuroscientists and say, what do you know about how the brain does this? And so neuroscience has informed artificial intelligence research, and artificial intelligence in turn has informed research in neuroscience. So these two fields have worked hand in hand through the years. And this also tells us if we know a little bit more about how the brain works, we can actually use generative AI more effectively. So let's go and take a little look at how the brain works. We know it's really complex, but if we focus in on one aspect of the brain, and that is that fundamental building block of the neuron. And the neuron is, it's, here's neurons in 20 seconds. They've got legs that are called dendrites. They have toes off their legs, which are called dendritic spines. And it has an arm that reaches out, it's called an axon. That's neurons in 20 seconds. And that's all you really need to know, probably more than you need to know about neurons. Except that what they're doing is they are sending signals to one another whenever you are learning something. So that signal is largely electrical, jumps that little gap with neurotransmitters, and then travels on to the next neuron. And what neurons are doing when you are learning something is they are making a series of connections in long-term memory in the brain. So, let's see. Okay, it's thinking today. It's being very deliberate. But see, you can see there's nice connections that are forming. Whenever you're learning something, you're creating sort of a cluster of connecting neurons in long-term memory. Now, we have been told by some educators and psychologists before we knew information in neuroscience, and even now, they will say, you don't need to remember things. You can always just look it up. But would I be able to speak Hindi if I just went to Google Translate and used that to look it up for me? Of course not. For me to gain expertise in anything, I have to have information in long-term memory. So if you look at my school of engineering, if you look at schools of engineering, of science, of mathematics across the US, where are many of my collegial faculty from? They are from places like India, China, Middle East, that still have respect for the value of some rote learning. So learning things by heart, don't throw that away from your education. This is actually all the more important in this age of generative AI. So how do you strengthen those connections between neurons? If you look, let's see if we can get this to come up. It is quite slow. There we go. Okay. So when we are trying to make those, to learn something, we practice, we will strengthen those connections. And as we're strengthening those connections, we can much more easily pull them to mind. If we do not practice, if you hear what is said today and never think about it again, what will happen is sort of your little synaptic janitors will sweep those connections. So it's that's why it's important to retrieve the information. And by that, I mean, don't sit there and reread things. Don't sit there and underline things. Don't, for heaven's sakes, draw concept maps. No, make flashcards about key ideas. If you read a page, don't underline a bunch of it and turn the page. Instead, stop, look away, and see if you can retrieve from your own mind the key ideas of that page. So this is also what you want to be teaching your students. They will waste so much time rereading, underlining, and so forth. So these are like when you're getting this new information in mind, you are strengthening as you practice and retrieve. You're strengthening those connections, and that makes it much easier to pull the ideas to mind when you do need them. Now, this brings me to a very important idea, and that is the idea of metaphor. So, let's see, come on, let's go up here. Ah. Okay, there we go. So metaphor, when you know one concept, let's say you understand how water flows. So you got the idea, when you were a little kid, you played in puddles so you think about, oh, the current of water, that's so easy concept, but it was actually difficult for you to learn when you were a little infant and toddler and small child. But now that you know about the concept of the flow of water, you can more easily use that idea of the flow of water to build into a new idea, which is the flow of electricity, how electrical current flows. So as it turns out, metaphor is a really powerful way to teach about ideas related to new concepts that students are having difficulties understanding. So when I was working on the book A Mind for Numbers, I wrote the manuscript, and then I looked onto a website that's popular in the US called ratemyprofessors.com. And I found the names of thousands of top teachers, top professors in various disciplines, engineering, economics, English, you name it. And I found the emails of thousands of professors, and I wrote to them and I asked them, would you be willing to look at my manuscript and give me insight into not only how people get a mind for numbers, but how do they get a mind for language? How do they learn anything? How do you teach so students really learn? And how did you learn yourself? So I got back all this great information, but many of these professors independently told me, I do this one thing but it makes me into an exceptional teacher, but I don't tell the other faculty I do this. And what was that one thing? It was the use of metaphor and analogy. And he didn't tell the other faculty about it, not because they didn't want to share their powerful teaching methods, but because the other faculty would go, oh, you use metaphors and analogies? Oh, that's why you're so popular. It's because you're kind of making it easy for your students. But isn't that what we're supposed to be doing? Making things easier? It turns out that learning is really hard. In fact, a recent meta-analysis of thousands of research papers came to the conclusion that people don't like to learn because it's hard. So if you are, making things a little bit more assimilatable to your students, you are doing a very, very good thing. Now, metaphors will always, you can get a good metaphor for many concepts. There's always going to be a point where the metaphor breaks down. Now, when that metaphor breaks down, you throw it away and get a new one. So like electrical current, water is a good metaphor for electrical current, but at a quantum level, it's not a very good metaphor. So you throw it away if you're at a quantum level, but good luck finding a metaphor at a quantum level. But the real question is, how do we come up with metaphors to help our students? It used to be really difficult to do that. You go to specialty websites that in chemistry, there's some metaphors that can help you teaching, or you go to popular books and look at it. But now it's super easy. You just go to ChatGPT and ask for a metaphor. It's so cool. So let's take a look at a metaphor for example, if you're teaching about nursing and the idea of the importance of recognizing the early signs of sepsis in nursing. If you can catch those signs early, it will really help to stop it before everything gets out of control. So if you go to ChatGPT, it will say a very good metaphor for this is actually like detecting smoke before a wildfire starts. So, before it rages out of control, you'll get a little bit of smoke and you can stop it before it goes crazy. And sepsis is like that. So that's a good nursing example of a concept that can sometimes be difficult to come up with or to explain as a teacher. But let's say that you're in computer programming. So you might be wanting to explain the difference between main guard and scope in Python programming. How do you do that? Well, if you go to ChatGPT, you ask for a good metaphor, and the metaphor it will come back with is that main guard is like the gatekeeper of a castle, and scope is like the various rooms within the castle. So, and then it'll give you a lot more information. So any concept that you are finding difficult to teach, just go to ChatGPT, Claude, one of the generative AI platforms, and you will find it's really helpful for you. Don't just take the first metaphor. Ask for like 3 different metaphors, 5 different metaphors, and then pick the one that is best for you. Or tell them a little bit about your students and ask them what's a good metaphor that will help connect my students. So one thing I want you to do, so you'll be learning much more about generative AI and its uses in education from Mahesh this afternoon. But a good way to think of these large language models is simply like a car engine. If you are using ChatGPT, you are learning to drive a car. Now let's say you get Gemini or Claude or one of the other platforms. If you have learned how to use one of them, you can, in other words, you can learn how to drive the car. You can swap out the engine, and it's not that big a deal. There's minor characteristics that are different between them, just like a car would handle differently with different engines. But it helps you to understand it's a little bit less intimidating in this large language model world than you might think it would be. So, as we're thinking about things, I want to give you a worldwide perspective in how to understand what is going on currently in the world of large language models or engines. Now, we know that large language models are really, really difficult and expensive to make. So they're often fueled by some of the world's biggest companies. In the States, there's Google, Amazon, Microsoft, and Meta, and these have made some of the largest large language models. So Google does Gemini, Claude, which is my favorite, is affiliated with Amazon. ChatGPT is with Microsoft, and Meta has Llama. And then, so those are currently the biggest, but there can be occasional outliers that come up. Like in the last 2 months, a French platform called Mistral is becoming very prominent. So in China, similar to those large language models that are arising from the West, there is Baidu, Alibaba, and Tencent who have made very large language models there. Now, one thing I want you to understand is the idea of the context window. So I've got to update this a little bit because the context window is always growing, and right now, it used to be that Claude was amongst the biggest context window. And it was bigger than ChatGPT, but ChatGPT has really grown lately. What is context window? Think of it, if you have your car, how much gas at one time can you put in the fuel tank? That's what a context window is. And here's why context window is important. So when I was asked to write, so for that book, on common sense teaching, they asked me to write a foreword for the Japanese edition of this book. I'm like, how do I write a foreword? I don't know anything about teaching in Japan. So what I did was I took a PDF of the entire book, uploaded it into Claude, and I asked Claude, how does my book reinforce learn currently used methods of teaching in Japan? And how does my book extend with new information, new insights into teaching that is not currently done in Japan? Incidentally, if you're querying a large language model, you want to tell it to assume a persona of expertise. So for example, when I started my query, I said, okay, you are the world's leading expert on teaching in Japan. And that tells it, it signals it, go out and grab all this information about education in Japan. So I loaded my book in and asked these questions, got this great information back that informed the foreword that I wrote, and then sent it off to my editor in Japan. And she goes, oh, how do you know all this information about how teaching in Japan occurs? This is amazing. And I was just like, you know. But see, this is how we can all use, you know, there's perceptive ways that we can all use these generative AI engines to advance whatever area I'm looking at. So notice the context window was really important. I had to be able to load my whole book in, and that was really helpful. Now you might say, oh, look at Gemini, it's got 1 million tokens, that's the one I want to go to. But in my experience, it's not as good as ChatGPT or as Claude. Claude is so different from ChatGPT that you want to experiment with both. Here's what Claude did during its initial before launch. They gave it 1 million words of garbage, and they put one sentence in, and they asked it a question that could only be answered by that one sentence. So Claude comes right back, and they asked a question based on that sentence. Claude came right back and said, here's the answer, it was correct. And then Claude said, unprompted, you gave me 1 million words to see if I could pick that one sentence out of all the garbage, didn't you? It's like, so the engineers were really spooked. But it does have a different methodology for training, and we're gonna talk a little bit about that. That does make a difference in the different models. So try the free versions. I personally subscribe to Claude and ChatGPT because I find them to be the most effective for different purposes. So let us now, what we might wonder, yeah, but really, what is a large language model? So what a large language model is, we can understand it better if we look at the brain. Now, before we do that, I just want to mention there were 149 foundational large language models released in 2023 alone. So if you're overwhelmed with all these new things coming out every day, welcome to the club. We're all overwhelmed this way. So again, let's let's look at what large language models are in the context of how we learned how to create them by looking at what's going on in the brain. Now, I had mentioned before that you lay links in long-term memory, but I didn't mention that there's two pathways you can use to lay those links in long-term memory. Two major ways that we learn. So I'm going to give you a quick description of these two pathways. You don't need to remember the neural details. Just remember there's two different pathways and they have very different characteristics in what those neurons do. So I like to model working memory, which is in the prefrontal cortex at the front of the brain. I like to model that with a little octopus, that can reach back into long-term memory and grab information out. So your working memories right now, they're working away, they're grabbing that information that I am giving it to you, and they're putting it through the hippocampus into long-term memory. But the other pathway is the automatic pathway. And that pathway goes through the basal ganglia. So two different pathways. When you're teaching, you are actually teaching information in two different ways for students. So the important thing from our perspective is that you need both types of links to have a student be successful in what they're learning. So let's try and take a little bit of a different perspective. If you look at this blue box, that blue box is representative of the declarative pathway. And the orange box is representative of that automatic pathway. So what we're going to do is we're going to look in more detail at those two different pathways. So your working memory takes in information. Let's say you're thinking about what we're learning here right now. So you're consciously aware of it. And so what you're doing is your hippocampus is kind of moving along and let's see, let's come on. We're thinking about it. So it's thinking slowly and deliberatively, and you can solve a problem. And you're mostly consciously aware of that problem that you're solving. So that's that deliberative system. But let's say that you are going to hit a baseball. So you have a bat, you're going to, no, let's see, what would it be here? Cricket, yeah. So what do you call the bat? I guess that's still the bat, okay. So you're going to hit the ball. What you're really doing is your mind is telling your basal ganglia, okay, I want you to hit the ball. So let's see, it should be coming up here someday. Here. Let's see, why is this not coming up? Okay, come on. I want to click it in, if it's not. It's not, oh, there it is, it finally came up, okay. So you're telling your basal ganglia, hit the ball. And then when you get back from the basal ganglia to your consciousness is, yes, I hit the ball and it went where it was supposed to go, or I hit the ball and it didn't go where it's supposed to go. But look at this, see that orange box? You are not conscious of the learning that is taking place in that orange box when you're hitting the ball. If you can remember, like when you're hitting a ball, you hit it, and you see what the outcome is, and your brain is learning, but it's completely unconscious. So what is going on in that black box or orange box of the basal ganglia? As it turns out, What's going on in that unconscious learning system is a system that is a deep neural net. Here you see those little dots are neurons. The connections between them are just the axons and the dendrites of the dendrites. So it's neurons, connections, and that hidden layer of neurons is what's going on in your basal ganglia when you're learning how to hit the ball. Now, this is not to say that the hippocampus, it does have its own nets of neurons, but we really understand what's going on with the non-conscious basal ganglia system. I mean, we understand it, but we're often simply not conscious of it. So every time you hit a ball, what you're really doing is you're hitting the ball and you're learning gradually. So each one of those lines going through there is you hitting the ball and learning from it. And as you're learning from it, you are like strengthening some of those connections and you're weakening other connections. And what all of this is doing is it's shaping your neural net. You're developing an expertise about hitting the ball, and it is remarkably safer, as I mentioned, to what's going on in large language models. In fact, large language models were developed because when they got stuck, they were like, well, how does the brain do this? And so from our perspective, it's valuable to just realize that we've got these two different pathways. One is conscious, that's that hippocampal, and one is unconscious. So what happens in humans who lose that, like they get whacked on the head and it messes up their hippocampal system? Well, what happens with those kind of individuals is they can end up hallucinating, confabulating, making things up. Because you don't have this conscious system that's looking over and saying, does this really make sense? So what we see in large language models is precisely this unconscious system without the guidance of the conscious system. So that's why it can just make up the screwiest things. So I like to think of it as my wonderful assistant that is occasionally a little bit psychotic. Now, if you look, what generative AI has done is it has pulled the rug out from underneath us as teachers and professors. Because suddenly it can make it can write essays, it can do our homework problem for us. Even so, we're complaining about students, who use it to learn less effectively. But what we don't think about is some of us use it too, like to advance our research and so forth by just having it go off and do things. So it can make things easier, but it's almost a little bit, you have to be very careful with it. And what I want to bring to your mind is something called the Flynn effect that you might have heard of before. And with the Flynn effect, what's going on is that from the 1930s to the 1970s, IQ scores around the world were going up. So researchers were looking at this and saying, well, why is this? And the result, they concluded that it was because education was providing more intellectual stimulation and really, in some sense, making people smarter. But what is really interesting from our perspective is look at this. From the 1970s to today, IQ scores have been declining. Well, if it's education responsible for the rise, is education responsible for the decline? what happened in 1970, right around that era? It turns out, I mean, even within a family, you can see that older kids on average were smarter, had a higher IQ than the younger kids. What was the difference? In the 70s, calculators came out. And suddenly, educators were saying, you don't need to remember things, you can always just look it up. And they didn't develop the mental skills that are involved in memory and retaining the information. So this tells you what you are doing.
Sorry.
This tells you that what you are doing as faculty in encouraging people to learn in every way you can is you are actually helping to improve their IQs. And it's all the more important, like now with ChatGPT, we don't want to fall into that same trap that we fell into when calculators came out, and they said, oh, you don't need to remember things. So it's what you are doing is still profoundly important, even in this day and age of generative AI. So as we're thinking about these things, and my computer is thinking about whether it's going to move forward. Are you gonna do it or are you not? Let's see. Let's see. Well, see, it seems to be. Is it coming? Oh, yay! Okay. So let's go back to our big spectrum of all those different large language models. So I'll concentrate more on those that are coming from the West. Now, I just want to give you a little bit of context so you can better understand the world of all these apps that you see coming out now. Now, there's many of them. ChatGPT was first out of the gate. So many of the apps grow out of their wrappers on ChatGPT. They have as the backend engine. And so you'll have writing assistants like Jenny, Grammarly, WriteSonic. WriteSonic is really quite impressive. Let's say you could even take a research paper and ask it to rewrite it as a script for a podcast. And it will write the script that's like really pretty cool. You know, you'll be sitting there and it'll say, oh, your telephone joke. And how it does this, I don't know. But it's quite clever. But sometimes you have to be careful. For example, Jasper, the last one on the list, is now in a little bit of hot water. Its stock prices are going down because people are beginning to understand that that particular wrapper, that app, is all going back to ChatGPT, and you can pretty much do many of the things that Jasper does, you know, without going and paying an extra amount of money each month. So you want to check out the free versions of these things, but then you want to also, you know, keep in mind, is this something I can still just do all by myself? Now, in the world of research, there's a gigantic basket load of all sorts of apps that are available. So what's interesting about all these different apps is they are trained not just on that internet, which has a lot of garbage on it, but they're also trained on a great corpus of research literature. So for example, Semantic Scholar is trained on over 200 million research articles. So it is much, it's safer to use some of these research based apps to help you with your writing and your research. I particularly like the website Cite, SCITE_, this particular website is, it has, like, it will take a large language model and pit it against itself. So it will come up with a research finding, then it will go to another part of the large language model that checks whether that research finding is correct. So it's much more likely to be valid. So check out a lot of these different websites. There's Live to Internet, like Copilot, that are integrated in. You might say, why do I need to have it integrated within my Outlook email or something like that? But it actually can go in and find context for a lot of your emails that's very helpful. Then there's good websites for teachers and instructors that, for example, if you want to get lesson plan and so forth, it can help you with that. Of course, Coursera's course builder, I think, is really amongst the best. Creative productivity platforms like Canva and Gamma, lots of coding related, coming off of Meta and Llama. Then there's lots of imagery. We've seen that with DALL-E. And if you're taking photos, wait for just a minute, I'll get everything all up. Take the picture. So we have, as well, we've got, Google is coming out with Runway, which is a strong contender visually. Then we have a lot of video, and video is very, very difficult, but there's all sorts of things. So there's one more little image that's gonna come up here. There we go. Now you can take pictures. So part of this is inspired by an illustration in the book Teaching with AI, which is an outstanding book. I highly recommend this book. So hopefully this gives you a little bit of context and perspective. But now let us, and also I'm glad to share my PowerPoint. So the PowerPoint is, it's on the machine here, and you can easily get a copy of it. And if it's helpful at all for what you're doing in the teaching, I will be really happy. So there's a few other books that I highly recommend. There's ChatGPT and the Future of AI by my colleague Terry Sinowski. There's also Ethan Mullick's book, Co-Intelligence, which I highly recommend. So these are all practical books, very straightforward to read, but they'll give you some nice insights into what's going on. If you want a bit of a more theoretical perspective, but still readable, I recommend The Worlds I See by Fei Li. And it talks about how she created ImageNet and how that fueled the generative AI revolution. The alignment problem may sound, like it's kind of dry. It is not. It will give you all sorts of insight into how human beings learn. So it's a wonderful book. And then from a more worldwide perspective, I recommend Kai-Fu Lee's AI Superpowers. So those are all great books. Now, as far as courses on generative AI, I highly recommend many of the courses from Coursera. For some reason, I seem to like that platform. And also check out Jules White's courses. They're excellent. His course on prompt engineering with ChatGPT is outstanding. So all of this is helpful. One thing I should say, you will learn a lot about good prompting from Jules' courses. And also, you can learn even more. Jules and I are doing the course Accelerate Your Learning with ChatGPT, which should be coming out at the end of this month. And I also have a course that actually will be a specialization on critical thinking. And one thing I would like to mention is sometimes you will hear a lot about good prompting. And good prompting is really important, but remember, it's not like Google search where you have to get exactly the right question in there that you want. It's an interactive thing. So if you don't get it, the response you need with your first prompt, it's like a conversation, you can refine. So don't worry over much about getting the perfect prompt, but learn more about how you can, elicit information. And with that, I have so much more, but I think I should stop now and ask if you might have any questions. Now, do we have time for questions?
Yes, we have.
Okay, okay, so if you might have any questions, okay.
Recall what you have done. What was the mediation? Because it's always shown that read first, learn then.
Okay, so reading is invaluable. So the question is, why? Okay, turn down my sound, so that I can echo going back here, there. Okay, so it just so happens that let's answer your question about, when you read, why should you recall it instead of underlining, for example, or rereading? So I want to ask you first, what of these four, what is the most effective? You should know the answer. Hey, how many people think it's rereading? Raise your hand. You get one thing to vote for, only one. So, how many rereading? Okay, we got, okay, how many highlighting or underlining? Few. How many retrieval practice or recall? Oh, and how many create a concept map? Okay. The concept map people have such good PR. The days, did you know that in educational literature, 0.13% of educational literature is replicated? What this means is virtually nothing is ever checked by anyone else. So people can come out with what's the latest fad in education in the US? If you stand at a board and write on a vertical surface, you will learn math better. I'm not kidding you, it's a huge fad. And it's like, this, a paper was published about this. Nobody really goes and checks and, refutes them because there's no glory in that. And so you get these educational fads arising. So when it came to concept mapping, they came out with the idea of concept mapping and everybody thought it was so cool that nobody checked. So as a result, everybody started believing that concept mapping was the best way to learn. And they, but finally, Jeff Carpicki, a psychologist, went and double checked all those four methods. And what he found was that by far, the most effective method for teaching was, wait for it, retrieval practice. And the reason, and I'm so happy because a lot of you here, yes, sometimes I go places and nobody raises their hand. And I went, wow. So when you're first learning something, you get weak links in memory. So you first do that reading, and it gets weak links in there. But each time that you retrieve the idea from your own mind, you are strengthened. So you're not reading it on the page. You're going, is it in my own mind? I'm a leading expert on learning, and no fool, I'll do this. I'll read something on a page and I'll go, I got this. There is no way this is not in my long-term memory. And then I'll ask myself the next morning, what was that? I can't remember it. So, what is a way we can use generative AI to strengthen our learning? I'm going to show you this is one of my favorite websites that integrates generative AI, but there's others as well. So there's Anki, Kahoot, and so forth. So this particular website is called I Do Recall, and I'll show you how it uses AI. So let's see, come on, I'm start, okay, so it's I Do Recall. And what you can do is take an electronic document, or you can load a YouTube script, or all sorts of things on it. You load your document on, you give it a label if you want to. So this is about generative AI. Now, you press that. There's a little tiny AI button in the corner. Press that, and it will generate retrieval practice questions for that entire page. So well, suddenly you've got all sorts of ways to practice and test yourself whether you really learned the material. Or let's say there's a really important concept in a sentence. You can kind of press the AI button, and it will instantly turn it into a retrieval practice question for you. So then we'll go and we'll take a little look at what, what does flashcards look like when you're practicing. So here's our retrieval practice flashcard. It asks, what do transformer networks learn to predict? They learn to predict long-range dependencies. And then you can rate how well you knew the answer. And it also, as I mentioned, what I like about this is it links back to the original source. So if you are using as the original source a YouTube, it will go and link right back to it if you want to check what the original reference was. And you can also go look at the statistics of, how well you've tested yourself. So, this kind of goes back, and hopefully you have a little bit that says, when you are underlining something, I mean, it can draw your attention later that that's a key point, which is valuable, but it's not at all as valuable as retrieval practice itself. In fact, the guy who developed I Do Recall was, should I say this? He was in medical school. He hardly ever went to class. He always watched online materials, or he read the book, and he made flashcards of everything. Do you know this was at Bucknell, which is a very good medical school? He graduated number one in his class. So his creation of this, yeah, that's pretty. His creation of this is his way of giving back to people to teach them the same methodology he used, about retrieval practice that is so tremendously helpful. Our students, they waste so much time just rereading. When your eyes go over the page again, it feels good. You feel as if you knew it, and it's easy because you're just letting your eyes go over and it seems more familiar. It's a lot harder to retrieve it from your own mind, so people don't naturally do that because, it doesn't seem as easy, but it gets that information much more quickly. Wonderful question. Thank you so much. Any more questions? Yes.
I had a question. So, if I was listening correctly, you spoke about how modern GPs use a more automatic method of thinking. And I wanted to ask was, what is the future of these models? Is it to integrate more deliberate way of thinking or to further the process of automatic way of thinking? Because I see both of them being very useful.
So I'm involved with a grant that Terry Sanowski is co-PI on for the National Science Foundation. And what they're doing is they're trying to find ways to integrate more of this conscious deliberative processing into, what's going on with that more automatic, basal ganglia-like thinking. So there's many different researchers going in many different directions. There's a group in Japan that is similarly kind of trying to be inspired by the human brain to come up with something that is, more, more aligned with the human way of thinking and having that conscious overview. But, be careful what you wish for. So, yeah.
So, excellent session, Bob. I think the amount of information that we got to hear was quite amazing. I'm more fascinated about the point that you talked about, especially on using metaphor for it, ensuring that what we tend to teach has a lot more absorption into the students when they're listening to it. But can I understand in terms of why is that more effective? Why does it make a student when he's listening more connected, or he understands and absorbs and retains? What is the science behind that?
So, it just so happens that we can have something that can illustrate what is going on with metaphor a little more effectively. So let's see, okay. So first off, remember that if you already have a concept in mind, it's a lot easier to just build a simple bridge to the new concept, which is similar, in the brain to what you already know. So, so from that perspective, so keeping that in mind, there's a new idea that I'd like to introduce, and that is the value of motivating and hooking your students, getting them curious about what you're doing. This goes right along with what we've just been talking about. If you can make your students curious, you will actually elicit dopamine in the brain. And dopamine is the feel-good molecule. It's an anticipatory molecule. It arises when you get, you unexpectedly finally solve that problem. Or, it's like, okay. And dopamine in the brain, there's dopamine neurons in the brain. And what they do is they can squirt dopamine around the brain, particularly in the areas involved in what you are just focusing on, right? So it can send dopamine to that area. And what happens, one interesting observation that researchers have made is that little mice who get their dopamine systems inactivated cannot learn anything new. So there's something magical about dopamine. Dopamine, as it turns out, here's what it does. So if you can get dopamine potentiated in your students' brains, they get curious about something. Here's how it helps. Let's say you're trying to solve a problem. So you try to solve it, you don't get the right solution, and so you try again to solve it. And you keep trying and trying to solve this problem, and you're not getting a solution. So let's see if it goes along here. Come on, let's go. Let's see, it's thinking, it's going so much more swiftly on my screen. So you're having trouble getting a solution, but finally you keep trying to solve that problem and you get the solution. You get the right answer. What that does, that aha feeling of I got the right answer, sprinkles dopamine right at that edge between the neurons, that little synaptic cleft right there. And that helps make those connections. Sorry about that. But that helps seal in these connections between neurons. That creates that set of links that I was talking about. And more than that, when students are curious, they focus more effectively. There's something called the focus mode. They don't mind wander as much. And literally, the visual field darkens, so they focus more effectively. So what do you do as a teacher? You ask generative AI for ideas to help promote curiosity, to help motivate your students. So, for example, I was on the one of the world's ugliest horses. I hate to say it, nothing against horses, but I love horses actually. But I was in Mongolia there, and they were complaining to me that a big problem for them was that they couldn't like reach their students with metaphors or with teaching in a way that their students could understand. So a lot of their students were coming off of the Mongolian steppe. They have the professors in Ulaanbaatar who have grown up in the city. How could they like talk about Python programming in a way that someone coming off the steppe who really knows yurts and migratory patterns, you know, and herding and so forth, they understand those things, but they don't, you know, they don't even care about Python programming. But if you go and ask ChatGPT, you'll get answers about how to contextualize your teaching in a way these students can really understand it by virtue of their own background. So it's valuable, you know, you want to do the best you can to nowadays, motivating our students is the most important thing around. So use ChatGPT to help evoke curiosity. What I will do sometimes, let's say I'm scripting a video, I want to hook a curiosity-inducing hook at the beginning of the video. I'll go to Claude. Claude is most creative, and say, "Here's my script. Can you give me an idea for something that will evoke curiosity at the beginning of the script?" I'll come back with really interesting ideas. So hopefully this gives a bit of context about how to help motivate and help your students be more curious about what you're teaching.
Barbara, one question that was bothering me. You spoke about rote learning is still important.
Yes,
We cannot just rule it out.
right.
Okay,
So rote learning is really important. We can't rule it out. Let's give you the microphone.
But we teachers, you know, we speak very negative about it. Saying that, you know, that is not the way to learn. Okay, so what's your message to all the teachers? Because we would like to know the science behind the rote learning.
So, for example, retrieval practice, which like, let's say that rote learning has been stigmatized as something that means you memorize something without understanding it. But most people, when they're memorizing, they understand what's going on. You have to get information in long-term memory. There are literally hundreds and hundreds of articles that of research articles that show the vital importance of retrieval practice. And they didn't want, when Jeff Karpicki was doing the original research on retrieval practice, he didn't want to call it rote learning because it has such a bad reputation. But the reality is that retrieval practice or rote learning, whichever one you want to call it, is invaluable in in learning and in education, and there's hundreds and hundreds of research articles that have validated this. If you look, when you're learning a new language, you're gonna learn it by heart, some things. And gaining expertise in anything, you have to have that knowledge within your head. Here is, let's see, where it's, okay. So I want to just give you a quick, okay. So let's look at the difference between working memory, long-term memory, and octopuses. Okay, so working memory, remember, I like to think of it like an octopus. And it's an octopus that only has 4 arms, which means you can only hold 4 things in mind at once, right? Or 4 pieces of information. The pieces of information can vary depending on how much background you have in that area. Now, long-term memory, on the other hand, is more like a set of lockers, and those lockers are scattered around the brain, and within those lockers are sets of neural links. So what we want our students to do is we want them to have practice using retrieval practice to build those links in long-term memory, and then they put them into long-term memory, and then later they can go and grab those links out of long-term memory. So so this brings me to my younger daughter, Rachel. So you might ask, how did you make a massive open online course that's so popular for virtually nothing? Use your family members. So I asked our younger daughter to model just, before I took this video, she had not long before learned how to back up the car. So she's learning to drive. So I asked her to model for us what it felt like for her when she was first learning to back up the car. So watch her little face when she starts to back up the car. She's like, do I look in the front mirror? Do I look in the back mirror? Do I look to the side? Where do I go? And then, of course, off she goes into the ditch. One thing when she was first learning to back up the car was her working memory had a heavy cognitive load, and she didn't have any arms on her octopus available for any other kind of thinking. Don't interrupt that person who's just learning to back up a car, because that adds to their cognitive load. I probably shouldn't say this, but my father had only 2 car driving accidents in his entire life. And during both of this, we were talking. So, I distracted him. His working memory was overloaded, and then he couldn't take in that new information. But once Rachel learned to back up the car, all she had to do was think, oh, I want to back up the car. And she can pull those links to mind, and she has a light cognitive load. So she can think about other things like, are my seatbelts fastened? Or what's the song playing on the radio? So ultimately, what we want our students to be able to do, we want them to be creative, right? But creativity involves using your working memory to be able to pull information you already have in mind. Like, see, the octopus is getting those links you've already learned well and combining them in fresh ways, which is often what we're doing on tests. We have a little bit different problem. You better know the material, but you've got to also, be able to combine it in a fresh way. But if you don't have that material in long-term memory, you have nothing to combine. So let's look at that octopus. This is a student who has studied without retrieval practice. So they think it's all in there, And so then they sit down to the test and they go, wait a minute, I have no neural links, you know, and that's because they have not, retrieval practice is like a real tiny test of whether you have it. And if you haven't tested yourself that way, you can sit down for a real test, and that's when you finally discover that it's not in long-term memory. So what will your students then do? They'll come up to you and say, I suffer from test anxiety. And they don't. I mean, often they do not. It's that we have not taught them how, how important it is to study using retrieval practice. So when you hear from the West these ideas like, oh, it's not important, to memorize things. Remember, 0.13% of all education literature is replicated. There's a lot of fads out there, and it's not what neuroscience is telling us. Here's what neuroscience and generative AI is telling us. We have 4 arms. We can only hold on average 4 pieces of information in mind to creatively combine. But guess what? Generative AI has thousands of arms. So you can use it to co-create in marvelous new ways and give you great new ideas. So you want to join that AI revolution. And I know Mahesh he will be giving us far more today about how that can happen. So thank you so much. Wow.
That was amazing. And it was a whole new world. Thank you so much. And
Any quick questions we can.
so I want to,
Quick question, quick answer.
one
Quick question, quick answer.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I wanted to ask you that generative AI, apart from this learning, has also been extensively used in research. So I just wanted to know that what is your opinion about generative AI in research? Do you look at as a tool which is killing the creativity and innovation in research?
So we will look at that as the tool which is killing the creativity and innovation in research, which a human mind can think and create on their own, or we will look at as a tool which is just a support system for those who are not so creative and they cannot innovate a new idea and research.
So, that's a great question. There's really good evidence that like if you're not such a productive worker, that it actually boosts your generative AI can boost your productivity to the level of a really productive worker. So a really productive worker or a really creative worker, it can simply enhance. So the breakthroughs that are going to occur from generative AI, I mean, like I was just at a generative AI conference in Las Vegas. It is unbelievable how quickly medical research is going to be advancing because of generative AI under the guidance of the conscious aspects of the human brain. So everything I see is it's a tool, it's going to make it easier for us to be creative. Thus far, the really creative breakthroughs are most often from human minds. But we are getting new insights about how to look at things because we can combine information in new ways, very well with this new generative AI approach. So I'm really encouraged, I mean, for us as researchers, think about it this way. You write a research paper. You give it, maybe, maybe your spouse reads it over, your colleagues, your friends read it over, they give you insight. You don't put a footnote into your research article that says, my husband had a really good idea about how to report this sentence. Similarly, when I put something into AI, generative AI, I might put a paragraph in and it would give me some ideas about how to rewrite things more elegantly. It might even point me to new research that I had missed somehow. All of this just makes my book much better. It's like having a friend that's really, really knowledgeable. But ultimately, I am the one that is responsible for whatever I submit for publication. So I just see it as a great new tool that we're gonna see some terrific research coming out as a result.
Okay, so as you showed one graph where IQ was going down after 1970. So do you think in future, even in research, the graph will go down in terms of creativity in case we are using it too extensively to supplement our creativity?
What has been found recently, research has grown substantively. We've made dramatic new strides. But in recent years, research has stagnated. It really has not been very innovative in past years. So there's plenty of evidence that it has leveled off recently, not because of AI, but because it's really hard to make new breakthroughs in research. I think of research breakthroughs as like wandering the desert on your hands and knees, hoping to get across an oasis. It's really hard to make breakthroughs. So I think it's going like this, and then it's going to go like this again because of generative. Oh, sorry, that was supposed to be a short answer.
Sorry.
No more questions?
So one last.
Yeah, good question.
So as social humans, we have an instinct to talk to each other, right? Yeah, I was saying that as social human beings, we have instinct to talk to each other. And you possibility where one day in future the two AI models can start talking to each other without our prompts.
They are already doing that.
Without our prompts, they're doing it.
Right.
And that's not gonna endanger the human species.
Well, they're doing their best to ensure it doesn't. But that is, having multi-agents, multiple agents working independently from one another. So like, something will, bot will go out, look at research results, give it to another bot, and the bot goes and checks whether that's very good, then comes back and says, oh, wait a minute, you made this stuff up. So multi-agent bots are the best way they know of to try to come up with something more similar to that deliberative conscious. And none of them are conscious, but they're programmed in such a way to interact well with one another. So it's already going on. Yeah.
No more questions? Yeah. Last question. And then we'll close it.
Respect to research, if I use the chat GPT to write any research paper and all, it shows any plagiarism.
Yes.
So, oftentimes you cannot tell, like, supposedly there's some engines out there that can detect whether something's plagiarized. But, it can be very difficult to tell, particularly if you give instructions to write in such a way that it's got mistakes and so forth. But it is generally what it comes up with is novel. It's creative restructuring of sentences and paragraphs and so forth. So what I do, like, if I like I'm a conference reviewer, right? And I'll get these papers sometimes, and it's really clear that somebody just generated it on the AI, never read it themselves. You know, and I'm like, zero, reject, you know, because it wasn't, you know, there's nothing there. Oftentimes, what can happen with generative AI generated papers, you know, is it's really vague and generic. Because, you know, for one thing, it's not properly prompted, but, um, you're gonna find really bad submissions in any case. Is this making the percentage of bad submissions increase? Probably. But, good science is good science, and you just want to be aiming at that instead of, can I generate a paper? You can generate a paper, go to a paper mill. You get the dollars to get your paper published. And some people do that, but do not recognize it as authoritative, researchers. So, you know, just do good work. There's always gonna be those on the margins who, you know, do bad work and use AI and they need to help them with the bad work. So just ignore, hopefully the system will catch most of them.
Because most of the, nowadays, most of the students were using the chat GPT to write a report as well as the research paper. And one of my student did like that, and I asked the student whether you wrote this paper using chat GPT, but that student says no. Then same paper I uploaded to the chat GPT and asked this thing, you wrote this? Then chat GPT said that yes, I only wrote it.
You know, it depends on how you prompt it, because remember, ChatGPT is designed to make you happy. So if you wrote the prompt in a way that it was obvious to ChatGPT that you wanted it to say yes, it will say yes, even if it wasn't true, because I don't think there isn't a way for it to actually go and check other people's stuff.
Because nowadays, students, as you mentioned, that in these slides, innovative about 1970s, the IQ is decaying. But nowadays, because of the chat, I know that's still more. Because one more reason I would tell you is nowadays students are losing their own capability, even they will not be able to write the maybe permission letter. If I ask, it can write a permission letter, they will go with the chat GPT. Can write a permission letter for so and so. They are happening, so that's why how going to be impact for the students as well as their IQs.
So just remember that motivational, you know, how to motivate our students. Go and ask ChatGPT right now. The only way you're at the cusp of a revolution. The only way I know for sure that you can be sure that your students have actually learned what you want them to learn is to put them in front of you and watch them as you test them. And I think we need to, you know, we need to depend on that until we can figure out other ways to overcome what ChatGPT is doing. Will you have bad students who take advantage? You have always have some percentage of students who've done that, and it will be no different now. But the more you can motivate them to learn that they need to be motivated in themselves to really learn the material, the better off they will be. So we'll always have some percentage of problematic students that will continue, but do the best you can with the many great students you have. So, okay? Thank you.
So I think we had the word on connection, but unfortunately, Dr. Barbara is really having a very tight schedule, she has to rush back. But how I wish we had a lot more time for interaction.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for bringing out some very important aspects. Like the idea of forming connections, strengthening the connections, and leading to effective retrieval is something. Yes, so thank you so much for convincingly answering so many questions and beautifully bringing out what exactly it takes to learn effectively, because I'm reminded of a popular quote which says, capacity to learn is a gift, ability to learn is a skill, And the willingness to learn is a choice. So you have brought up. And thank you very much for this wonderful session. Thank you. And I now request Ms. Prashasti Rastogi, who is the Senior Director for Coursera, to come out with the closing remarks. Thank you, everyone here. I'll try to use the retrieval practice that Dr. Barbara just told us in the past 2 hours and see whether I turn out to be a happy octopus or a tense octopus. So starting with Dr. Bang, he talked about how Coursera has impacted and enabled students to learn over 15 subjects at RB. I think really commendable. Let me retrieve what were the subject matters. I think they were human skills and life skills like mental health, psychology, music, language for professional development. So I passed the first test. And Barbara talked a lot about retention. She talked about how can we make those nice links, wonderful memory necklaces come through. What I feel is in the emerging era of generative AI, how students assimilate and reproduce information is completely changing. So as teachers, as faculty, as the builders of the nation, one needs to outsmart them even better. And some of the recommendations that you made on courses, I think it's a wonderful tool and a handbook for every faculty here to pick up those courses and smarter than your students because they already know what OpenAI is already doing for them. And the other thing that I am carrying back today here is generative AI is an enabler, not a disruptor. At Coursera, we believe in this very firmly. We felt how can we use generative AI to enable and solve the problem statements that a teaching and learning environment always needed? Can we enable the faculty to localize and co-create content for students who can teach in a very local context and a classroom specific context? We understood how can we make these courses language inclusive. So we used machine translations to translate courses in multiple languages, Hindi is one of them. And then we also felt when the teachers are teaching in the classroom and the students are learning, how do you define engagement how do you define engagement of a similar level in an online space? So there's an AI tutor called Coursera Coach, which sits on the Coursera platform and acts as that tutor. Students can ask basic questions, give me an example of an application of the concept that I'm learning, but can also ask questions like, what careers will open up for me once I learn these skills? So AI has to be embraced. AI, we are not left with a choice of not adapting to generative AI because students already are. The world of industry already is. There was a BCG study where 1,000 consultants were put into practice on a typical problem. And they were then asked to repeat that problem using generative AI, and the productivity gains moved significantly up the average number. And the maximum productivity gains were seen in people who were below the average productivity bar. So AI is here. And thank you, Barbara, for helping us connect the human system and how do we use generative AI capabilities to sharpen the way we learn, to sharpen the way we think. And thank you for the talk today. And most of all, thank you, Dr. Bang, Dr. Annapurna. It's a privilege to be here and an honor to be sitting together with your faculty, with your students who are joining live from different places. It's been a wonderful, wonderful morning. Thank you for the opportunity. Coming towards the end of the session, it's my duty to thank all those who are involved in this John F. Kennedy once said, as we express our gratitude, we must never forget that the highest appreciation is not to utter words, but to live by them. So I take this opportunity to express my sincere thanks to the keynote speaker for today, Dr. Barbara Oakley, Professor of Engineering, Oakland University, Michigan, for having graced the occasion and for having taken us through this wonderful learning journey. Thank you so much. I request Basaran sir to please hand over a token of appreciation, token of gratitude to Dr. Barbara.
You will like this. It's artifacts of India.
Oh, I know, I love it.
Yes. Artifacts. Made by rural artisans. Yes. Yes. Yeah, 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 yeah. You will cherish it. Thank you so much.
I would like to express my sincere thanks to the guest of honor, Ms. Prashasti Rastogi, Senior Director of Coursera, for the gracious presence today. I request Dr. Gajendra sir to please hand over a token of gratitude to Ms. Rastogi.
Thank you.
I take this opportunity to thank DP Nagraj sir, Honorary Joint Secretary, RSST, for presiding over today's event. Thank you, sir. It's of course the force behind today's event. We have Mr. Mahesh and Mr. Karun, who have been there with us throughout in organizing this event. And definitely, we would like to express our sincere thanks to both of you. I request Dr. Uma to please present a token of appreciation. Mr. Mahesh. And to Mr. Karun Jain.
Sir, I.
Mr. Karun, please accept. I would like to thank our director of Purushottam for supporting us in this event. I take this opportunity to thank all our colleagues from all the RV group of institutions who are here today. So as one family, let's join the Gen AI revolution. So thank you so much. And I will express my personal gratitude to all my faculty colleagues, to the admin and the technical staff who have made this technical session a wonderful success. Thank you. And of course, students who have benefited out of it. You have been the lucky lot. Thank you so much for being here.
Live on YouTube.
Yes, so we have many people who have watched this live on YouTube, and we have our students who are watching the live stream from the other locations. Thank you all for being here with us, and it's a wonderful day. Thank you. And students with special instruction, please go back to your desks.